What's up, everybody? It's the Power Rankings Podcast, aka the Power Rankings Show. I'm your host, Elliot Harrison, and I am pleased to be joined by the one and only at Marcus_Mosher. Hello, sir.
Best time of the year, Elliot. I love the draft more than anything else. This is awesome. The night before the draft is one of my favorite times of the year.
Yeah, I'm really brimming with excitement.
I
Brimming.
couldn't sleep last night. I was so excited to get up this morning and have my coffee and read mock drafts. It's unbelievable that
Read mock draft. I mean, come on. Really, at this point, are you still reading mock drafts?
Oh, I was just reading one while you were gone doing something before the show. So yeah, that
And
one
you-
had
you
Cowboys
know-
taking Michael Mayer first round. I was excited.
What's the difference between some dude's mock draft or some gal's mock draft now and 5 days ago?
I think it's like sports fan fiction, right? It's just
Yeah.
fun to see everybody's thoughts and the way it could go. So I enjoy it.
Yeah. Oh, boy. My mock draft 5.0. My
I'm
mock
excited.
draft 7.0. How many mock drafts have you done?
Oh, like just the simulators, probably 1,000. Seriously, at least 5 or 6 a day.
You know, next time you tell me like, gosh, Elliot, and I just had too much on my plate, you know, I can't do another podcast or write another article. I mean, I am just so, snowed under over here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no better time. You're sitting at the dinner table, do a quick mock,
Yeah.
right before you go to bed, do just a little simulator. So
Your wife's like trying to help your daughter eat. You know, your wife is basically prepared your dinner after she's shoveled out your driveway because you won't do it. And then you come in, you sit at the dinner table with your iPad and you do Marcus's mock draft 989.0.
well, it's better than
Sorry,
a couple years
1,000.0.
ago when I had a whiteboard in our kitchen that I would just
Oh my gosh.
constantly
All
do
right.
it. But yeah, let's go ahead and start talking draft.
Yeah, can we start talking about this draft? Well, I didn't let Marcus do another mock draft per se, but what I wanted to know, and something I hadn't really seen, is just a rundown of the top 8 quarterback prospects, because I think that's we have a rundown of 8, so that makes it kind of convenient that way. But also, I always think there's about 8 guys in every draft, approx, that have an opportunity to start in the NFL. Now, some of these guys never make it. Some of them become career backups. Obviously, some of them become stars. But I think that's kind of the number of how many legit, and by legit, I just mean like NFL capable quarterback prospects in a given draft. Obviously, a lot of factors go into that. So I asked Marcus to look at the top 8 and then have a landing spot in this draft for each one, whatever round it may end up being. And so we did that. And so I'm kind of curious to see, first of all, how he ranked the first few guys, and then also to see who he's kind of got down at the bottom of the board there. I see the team at the bottom of the board. So that's what we're doing today. So first things first, how much were you influenced by other people's mock drafts when you're ranking your quarterback prospects? Because I know you watch a lot of tape on these guys.
I try not to be influenced, but I think it's kind of natural. You start to hear some fits and where these quarterbacks might go or might land or might be selected. And, I think it kind of bleeds into your analysis. But for the most part, I think I had a pretty good feel on these guys for the last couple of months. So excited to dive right into it.
Boy, I tell you, when my curtains are open like this, I look like Casper. It's crazy.
That's right.
I thought you were bad. Man, oh
No,
man.
I got the spray tanner. It's fine.
Dude, doesn't that stuff streak? Like, do you ever go to the grocery store and it looks like you just got this big brown, peninsula on your cheek?
I don't know. I don't use that stuff. Can we talk about the Panthers at number 1, please?
We can, and I'm a little concerned about the Panthers at number 1. They can't afford to bungle this, man. So Who's the quarterback and why?
I have Bryce Young. I think he's the best quarterback prospect in this class from Alabama. The only knock on him is height. If he was 6'2", I think we'd be talking about him as a Joe Burrow level prospect.
Yeah.
In fact, he might already be there. Like, his game is so much built on maneuvering in the pocket, keeping his eyes down the field, and just making the smart play over and over again. I will say this is different than Mac Jones and Tua, where he had just a bunch of weapons galore at Alabama.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of NFL prospects, believe it or not, on that offense, and he made it work. I think Bryce Young with Frank Reich in Carolina is going to work.
There's something to be said for that. It reminds me a little bit, I guess this is a different situation, but wasn't the book on Jay Cutler, if you go way back, Jay Cutler had all the tools. I mean, great arm talent with the release, but he didn't win a lot of games in college. And people said, yeah, he didn't win a lot of games, but gosh, his skills and ability to move that offense and score points overrides that. This is a little different situation. And that you're saying, hey, he was able to overcome not necessarily having pro-ready weapons. But sometimes when I hear these kind of things, what I think of is like, why are we already building in excuses about a player? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, why is this even a talking point for Bryce Young? Isn't he just good enough? We don't need to talk about his weapons at Alabama.
Well, I think it's worth comparing to the next guy I have on my list, CJ Stroud at number 2, because you compare the weapons. And it's not similar, right? CJ Stroud had 3 first-round picks at wide receiver over the last 2 years: Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Chris Olave. He has arguably the greatest wide receiver prospect we've seen in the last 20 years. Marvin Harrison Jr. was their 4th receiver in 2021. And they were so loaded at receiver that Jamison Williams couldn't get on the field, transfer to Alabama for a season. So when you look at having, 3 top 15 picks compared to what Bryce Young had this year, I think it is worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, I understand that. If we're doing a comparative analysis, I'm always just a little skeptical when we're talking about a top prospect. Yes. Do you remember that talk about Jay Cutler?
Coming out of Vanderbilt. No, of course. Yeah, that was the thing, is that team wasn't very good. He put up some ridiculous stats, but you were always wondering, okay, can he actually beat big time competition? And that's one of the things that I look for, Elliot, for these quarterbacks is, can you elevate the team around you? I'm going to use an example, Dak Prescott in Mississippi State, right? That team was not good. They beat Alabama his senior year, and they were number 1 in the country for a team that's never there. Seems like that is something that does matter quite a bit.
Before I forget, I want to ask you one other question, because I really think I'll forget, especially while we're talking about these top 2 guys here at Carolina and Houston, obviously with the top 2 picks. If we go back to kind of Jay Cutler's era, he was in the AFC West with the Broncos. Phillip Rivers was a young quarterback at the exact same time. The big thing with Phillip Rivers when he came out that was such a glowing part of his profile was, I think he had started like 51 college football games, which was the most ever at the time. I think they played 12 regular season games, and he had started like 3 bowl games. Is there any player like that out of these top 8 that's really a feather in their cap, just that they've played a ton of college football games, so they just have more experience, even if they maybe aren't better?
Yes, that one's coming in at number 6. We'll talk about it in a second. But
okay, cool.
I do want to mention Bill Parcells had a set rule on how many number of starts he wanted from a quarterback that he was going to draft. And the more that you kind of dive into quarterbacks and over the last 20 years, it makes a lot of sense, right? You want guys that had a bunch of reps. And if you go look at, like, let's use last year's class, who was the guy that threw the most passes and had the most starts of all the quarterbacks drafted? It was Brock Purdy. So it wasn't a shock when Purdy got out of the field that, hey, it doesn't look too big for him. He's done this a million times before. I just think that is something we need to factor in a little bit more than what we do.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm a big proponent of tape over measurables, for all you combine peeps out there. Sorry, but I always have been. And I know you like to watch the tape and do the combine. So I know you kind of agree with me, because you wouldn't watch all the tape that you do. If we stay in recent vintage, especially with the Carolina Panthers, the knock on Cam Newton, right? In 2011 was, he'd only played 1 year, right, with Auburn. I think he played at Blaine. Was it Blaine College? Blaine. I think it's in Houston.
Then he went to
college.
Then he went to Florida, didn't play, transferred to Auburn.
He didn't really have a lot of starts against the big time competition in his case. So Cam Newton still had a really great career. It's just something that's always interested me. Okay. So if Houston doesn't trade down and they get Stroud, that's going to have Indianapolis, according to you, taking the next quarterback. Who's Indy going to be taking?
I look at that team with Shane Steichen as their head coach and a pretty decent offensive line and a good running game. And I want them to draft a quarterback that fits that style of offense, that can hand the ball off 25 times a game, that can use his legs to keep, the chains moving. And I think it's Anthony Richardson. I kind of think the Colts need to stop with these traditional pocket passers and just get somebody with some upside. And I think Richardson, for his sake, I think this is the best possible landing spot because Stryken has a fantastic track record of developing mobile quarterbacks. And I just think in Indianapolis, you've given some time. Maybe you let Gardner Minshew start. Maybe you let Nick Foles start for some of the time. You let Richardson sit. He could be a franchise level passer down the road.
If Houston were to try to wait at 12 or trade up from their 12 spot and not take Stroud at 2, would Indy still take Richardson?
I think so.
Okay.
Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Indy goes in a different direction because the rumblings kind of out of their camp is that they like Will Levis, who we're going to talk about in a second. But I think
there's never misdirection on those rumblings.
No. I just think this is the type of quarterback that Indy should be gambling on in round 1.
Okay. All right. I have to say the next team on your list might be the most interesting one on your list to me is the Minnesota Vikings, regardless of what people think about Kirk Cousins. Marcus and I, maybe we haven't talked about it much on the podcast, but when we have our weird, Thursday night, 1 a.m. conversations, East Coast, where Marcus calls me and says, football is so dumb, which does happen about every 3 weeks. We did talk recently that Kirk Cousins, that you and I might have underrated him a little bit. Mm-hmm. He always he always gets thrown behind Dak. That tier, he's always thrown kind of behind Dak, behind Stafford. And I don't know that that's fair, especially because of how much he's been available for his team.
Yes.
It's interesting to me that 4th on this list are the Minnesota Vikings. So what's your thinking there? And of course, obviously, who's the player?
Yeah. So you're right. Kirk Cousins is underrated. However, the Vikings have got to start thinking about the future here because Cousins is going to be 35 before the year kicks off.
Right.
He's going into the final year of his deal. If you're the Vikings, do you, as good as Cousins has been for you, do you want to pay him 45 to 50 million going into his age 36, 37, 38 season?
It's a good question.
Probably not. So the best way to do this, I think, in my opinion, is to draft a quarterback in the first few rounds this year, let him sit for the entire year, right? And then in 2024, you move on. I've got Will Levis here, the quarterback from Kentucky. Man, he's got a lot of tools. He's athletic. He's big. He's got arguably the best arm in this class, but his accuracy needs a lot of work, and the footwork is not great. You put him in that offense, you let him sit for a year, and then in 2024, it's his team and it's his show. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that is really interesting call. And I should say that when I talk about Kirk Cousins being available, I mentioned Stafford and Dak Prescott. It's more a feather in Kirk Cousins' cap than knocking guys for being hurt. Mm-hmm. It's just the ability to stay on the field is kind of a bonus. And he is, I don't know how many consecutive starts he has now at this point, but it's a lot. I could tell you that. All right. Now, the next team on your list is Seattle. Are we talking about Seattle at pick? I think they're at pick 20 of the first round. Or are we talking later on now?
They've got picks 5 and 20 in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they're going to draft a quarterback there. My guess is that's going to be the 2 picks that they use to upgrade their defense.
Right.
However, they have picks 37 and picks 52. I think that's a good spot to grab a developmental quarterback. And I've got Hendon Hooker, the prolific passer from Tennessee. He's 25 years old. It's a big knock. He's coming off a torn ACL, so he's probably not going to be ready until, I don't know, maybe December. But that's okay. Seattle just signed Geno Smith to a contract extension. It's really a 1-year deal. Why not throw pick 37 at a very talented quarterback who might have been a first-round pick without the ACL injury and just see? These are kind of bonus picks anyways for Seattle. Use your first 2 picks to upgrade defense and take a shot.
We've talked many times. I don't think we've talked about Kirk Cousins a lot, but we have talked about Geno Smith and how he was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC last year. But you still have to be skeptical. You just have to because of the career catalog there. And also maybe a lot of things went right. He probably took some teams by surprise. You remember
Yep.
Every team in the league is going to have about a year and a half worth of tape of him, under center in Seattle. I know he started some games in 2021. That's why I say that. I remember he started on the road against Pittsburgh on a Sunday night game. And then, of course, he played all last year. But I think this is smart. When you've got that many picks, I mean, you got 4 picks in the first 52 players.
Yeah.
That is a wealth of riches, as they say.
And I don't think drafting Hendon Hooker at 37 is going to make Geno Smith feel threatened or anything like that, right? It's a second round pick. It's not that big of a deal. It just gives you an option in 2024 if Geno happens to be a 1-year wonder, although I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, and sometimes you still got to compete, man. You gotta put it on the field or put it on the tape, as they say. All right, next up on your list is Las Vegas Raiders. What's the quarterback and what's the pick?
So first of all, I debated putting CJ Stroud to the Raiders at 7. I'm not sure that he gets there. And I think Bryce Young and Stroud are the 2 quarterbacks they want. If they don't draft one in round 1s, I think they're going to wait till round 3, round 4 to grab one. I've got Aiden O'Connell, a Big Ten quarterback from Purdue. I actually compared him a lot to Jimmy Garoppolo. Elliot, he has over 1,200 career passing attempts in the Big Ten. He was efficient. He's very, very much the prototypical stand in the pocket, make throws, not going to get outside and run. But when he's got time, he's accurate. And with Jimmy Garoppolo's injury history, I don't think it's a bad idea for the Raiders they've got pick 100. Take a quarterback at pick 100 and just let's see.
When you talk about throwing the ball a lot in college, would you say about 450 attempts a year would be a lot of pass attempts? Yep. Give or take. I mean, if you've got over 1,200 pass attempts, you're basically saying that's about 450 for 3 years running. Yeah. How many career starts does he have under his belt in college?
He's got 31 starts.
Yeah, that's a pretty good number right there. And especially in today's day and age when so many of these guys either come out early. Obviously, it's really hard for these guys to start as true freshmen.
And this guy started as a freshman, and then in 2020 there was the COVID year. Purdue just didn't play a lot of games that season, but he's been there for a long time. And if you go watch like some games they played against Ohio State and Michigan, he keeps that Purdue team in games. I like Aiden O'Connell a lot.
What's also interesting here is we were talking about Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers came out in the 2004 draft, and that, like I said, that was a big boon on him. Now, the deal with him was that he'd have to sit for 2 years. That was with Drew Brees, ironically, another Purdue quarterback, already there as a starter. I will say, though, when Phillip Rivers went to the Chargers, Drew Brees was not coming off a great 3-year run. It wasn't until actually Phillip Rivers got there that Drew Brees' good years with the Chargers were 2004, 2005.
Yep.
Rivers' first 2 years. Do you think this could have that kind of effect on Jimmy Garoppolo?
I think so. I think it's very possible. And I wouldn't be surprised if Aiden O'Connell beat out Jimmy Garoppolo by 2024, and that's the Raiders starting quarterback. I just think he hits everything that Josh McDaniels looks for in a starting quarterback, with accuracy, anticipation, quick release, and a pretty strong arm.
And once again, what overall pick are we talking about here?
Like 100?
100. Yeah. Hey, it never hurts to, didn't Ritter go not far from there? I think Ritter went somewhere in the 90s overall pick last year, but I think this is interesting, by the way. If you guys are wondering, Marcus is frozen. I know he was making a really strong point about Aiden O'Connell, but just kind of going back to this, if you can get a quarterback at the back end of the 3rd round, for example, and they have the potential to start games for you, I think that's a draft pick that's worthwhile. I was just saying while you were frozen, I think Desmond Ritter went very close to this area
74,
last year.
75, around there.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was in the 80s without looking, but I think that's a great value pick. Why not? I mean,
why not?
Why not light a fire under Jimmy Garoppolo? Not that he needs it. Maybe this guy can start for you. You're not spending a day 1 or day 2 pick, or high pick on this guy.
No,
I like it. Now the Cowboys, I'm assuming this is farther down the line. Who are they taking? And This is interesting to me because of the Cowboys situation. And I think the Cowboys, more than any team on this list, have the best shot to make the Super Bowl. I think that's pretty inarguable. I guess Minnesota would be the closest.
Yep.
And they need to do everything they can to retool their interior defensive line. They could look at wide receiver. They could look at running back.
Absolutely.
At the end of day 2 or top of day 3. So where is this?
I think this is anytime middle 3rd round and beyond.
Okay.
Jerry Jones has come out and said the Cowboys have not done a good enough job of spending resources at the quarterback position. We know Mike McCarthy's history in Green Bay, where they drafted a quarterback basically every year. And then on top of that, Dak Prescott has been kind of banged up, as you always like to bring up. Like, he's missed some time in each of the last 3 seasons. I think you draft a guy, for me, I think it's 4th or 5th round that you draft a guy and you put him behind Cooper Rush, who came back on a 1-year deal, and you just see. And the guy that I have is Clayton Tune from Houston. Now, we mentioned Aiden O'Connell throwing 1,200 passes in the Big Ten. Clayton Tune, 1,500 career passing attempts at Houston, 12,000 passing yards, 104 passing touchdowns. Like, he put up numbers on top of running a 4.64 at the combine. So you draft somebody with some tools, you sit him as your number 3 quarterback. Maybe he's on the practice squad or whatever, and you just see.
Man, that's a lot of pass attempts in college football. Boy, I'm thinking of my Houston quarterbacks. We've got Kevin Cobb, right? Believe he went to Houston.
Case Keenum.
Yeah. If I go way back, David Klingler and Andre Ware. Those are 4 off the top of my head. There's another one, though, that I think I'm missing. Is this guy, can he be as good as Kevin Cobb or Case Keenum? Case Keenum's had a pretty good little career.
Yeah, I think, he's bigger than Keenum, but I think that's the hope, right? Is that you get a high level backup who, if in the right situation, can, win you some games. And again, you're talking 4th round probably here for Clayton Tune. I think it makes some sense.
I do too. And if the Cowboys had Case Keenum, that would be a nice, nice little thing, but I tell you what, with the Cowboys, I really don't know what they're going to do this year. And I know you're talking 4th round, but you can still get a quality football player in the 4th round. Where is their 4th round pick overall in terms of number?
It's like 129 or something like that.
Yeah, because it's the playoff pick. So yeah, I get it. Okay, we got our last team on the list here. What do we got, Marcus? Player and where's he going?
Yeah, we got Jake Haener, a quarterback from Fresno State, 5'11.5", 207 pounds. He's small. Doesn't have a great arm, but he's accurate. He completed 72% of his passes last year at Fresno State, 9 yards an attempt. Does Sean Payton have a history working with small quarterbacks?
Maybe. By the way, our rundown doesn't like this at all. Our rundown wants us to talk Raiders. They're done with Raiders fans.
Is Sean Payton currently coaching a small quarterback right now in Denver?
Yes, he could be. Very well could be.
They also drafted your guy Ian Book with the Saints a couple years ago, who was another shorter quarterback. I think this is somebody who the sum is greater than the parts. I watched him at the Senior Bowl, and he's not physically impressive. He's the shortest quarterback there. He's not overly athletic, but he was the best quarterback in practice. He also happened to be the best quarterback in the game. He won the MVP. I think this is somebody you draft 5th, 6th round. You put him in that quarterback room, and with the way Russell Wilson played last year, I want another option in case things happen to go haywire again this season.
Yeah, so I always thought Eric over at Brinks was a 49ers fan. I think he's a Raiders fan because he doesn't want to switch to the Broncos.
That's all right.
The Broncos are, it's like, no, we're staying put. Any other quarterbacks in this draft? We just went through your top 8. Any other quarterbacks in this draft that you think might be being overlooked or have the potential to be a really good quality backup?
There is one that we should at least mention. Stetson Bennett from Georgia.
Yeah.
5'11", 192 pounds, ran a 4.67 40, which is actually pretty good.
Played some big games.
Played in a few big games, just happened to win 2 national championships in back-to-back seasons. And it wasn't like it was the defense only. Like they put up 60 points against TCU. I just don't know where he's going to get drafted because I think he's 25 years old. He had some arrests in the pre-draft process that weren't great, rubbed some teammates the wrong way, but all that guy does is win games.
Yeah. Now you're obviously way more the college football guy than I am, but just going off of my memory, I believe Jay Barker won back-to-back titles for Alabama, 92, 93, never made it in the NFL. And then Tommy Frazier was Nebraska's quarterback, 94, 95. I think Nebraska went back-to-back. Has there been anybody else that's won 2 national title games that I'm not thinking of?
Did Tim Tebow win 2 or did he only win 1?
I think he only won 1. T. Martin.
I think Tebow won
Peyton
1 as a
won
backup,
1.
right? When they had Chris Leak, I think was the starting. But yeah, I don't know. The list is pretty short of quarterbacks who have won 2 as a starter.
Well, you don't even have that many quarterbacks that start more than 2 seasons, full seasons in college anymore.
It's just pretty rare that you see a team win back-to-back national championships as well. So it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, you do have guys that start 3 years and stuff, but that's really hard to win 2 title games, national title games in 3 years. This is an interesting list. I wanted to say, your quarterback from Houston, he was throwing to your favorite prospect in the college draft. We did a power ranking short on that. So that's kind of interesting. But if you didn't catch that, check it out. We did the one guy that Marcus thinks is not being talked about enough, and I really liked his choice. I think we already put that out. Didn't we already put that out on Twitter?
Yeah, it was out yesterday. Yeah. Go listen to it. We're not going to say who it is, but if you know who Clayton Tune is, I can guarantee you know who this other player is.
You know, it's funny. When I go back and I haven't gone back and listened to that one yet, but when I was listening to the Aaron Rodgers one, I was just thinking about you gritting your teeth for us having to talk about Aaron Rodgers for 8 minutes.
Yeah.
At
least he's out of Green Bay. That's all. It's fine.
Yeah. So anyway, I still think just kind of closing out here for me with the quarterbacks, the most interesting thing to me is actually what a team does. And I really wonder if Houston is going to do it at 2. If D'Amico Ryans isn't in love with any of the guys, I realize he doesn't run the show per se, but he is the head coach, and you want to have a nice synergistic relationship between front office and a head coach who is much sought after, like D'Amico Ryans. They've got that pick at 12. They could maybe move up from 12 and wait. And I know you think this is way too big a risk. That to me is still the most interesting thing about how these dominoes fall. But you have them taking CJ Stroud. We'll see what happens there. But your final
6-year contract. Yeah, 6-year contract for D'Amico Ryans. I don't think he's going to feel pressured to do anything in round 1. But I think Stroud is the most interesting prospect here because he's accurate. He's played in a bunch of big games. But I don't know if NFL teams love him as much as draft Twitter does. So I think his range is anywhere from 2 to 13 or 14. Should be a wild night on Thursday.
I'm one last question. This is your second final thought. Which team do you think is going to get this right? Like, who do you think is actually going to do this right? Is it Carolina at number 1? You think this is where they're going?
A team that I didn't have listed. I think Tennessee ends up with a quarterback. I'm just not sure who and where. Because they're in a weird spot. Like they're between 2 eras right now. It's clear that Tannehill's time is running out. Malik Willis isn't it. So do they trade up for CJ Stroud, who, by the way, Mike Vrabel has a lot of connections at Ohio State? I won't be shocked if that's a team that we come out of the draft saying, you know what? I love the way that the Titans went and attacked their quarterback need rather than just sitting back and waiting for one to fall to them.
Right. And I think Malik Willis went in the 3rd round last year. A 3rd round pick the previous year does not preclude you from going back up and taking a quarterback again. So, hey, good stuff here. That's your kind of quarterback rundown for the 2023 draft, which starts tomorrow night. So we'll do a little reaction on Friday after the first round. So you'll have that from us. And then, like I said, go listen to our power ranking short. Players from Houston. That's all I'll say, but it's pretty cool. Marcus, by the way, hosts Locked on Cowboys. You probably know that by now. He does it with Landon McCool. He also covers the Raiders for Raiders Wire. and he writes for ProFootballFocus.com. He is at Marcus_Mosher on Twitter. I'm at Harrison NFL on Twitter. We appreciate you guys, and we will talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.